Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. CBC News learns one of two Vancouver Island police officers charged with sexual assault has taken his own life. Plus, low loony.
I just bought money from the exchange right here, and I have to say I was a little pinched.
The Canadian dollar dips below 70 cents US for the first time in almost 4 years. What does it mean for you? And
hey,
smarter than your average bears. People on Vancouver Island say some of the animals have learned how to get through secured garbage bins.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. We have a major update in the case of two Vancouver Island police officers charged with sexual assault. CBC News has learned that one of the officers from the Central Saanich Police Services has died. Several sources say Matthew Ball died by suicide on Tuesday. The CBC's Janella Hamilton joins us with more. Janella.
Dan, Vancouver police identified the two officers charged at a news conference Tuesday afternoon. They announced that 43-year-old Sergeant Matthew Ball was charged with sexual assault and breach of trust. Now, several police sources say Ball took his own life that same day. The VPD says Ball had served with the Calgary Police Service for about 12 years before joining Central Saanich in 2016. Another officer, 40-year-old Constable Ryan Johnston, is also charged with sexual assault. Vancouver police say Johnston and Ball both allegedly had inappropriate sexual contact with a woman they met on duty. The force says each had separate relationships with a vulnerable woman in her mid-20s. She was an adult at the time of the alleged offenses. Ball was charged in relation to offenses alleged to have happened between February 2019 to the end of October 2023 in Central Saanich. The charge against Johnston is in relation to offenses that allegedly happened between February and March of 2020. A former BC Solicitor General and police chief says the officers ought to have been monitored after the charges were laid.
The standard operating procedure is you put them on administrative duties or administrative leave while you continue on with the serious allegations against them. That doesn't seem to have occurred in this particular case.
On Tuesday, the chief of the Central Saanich Police Services said Ball and Johnston had been suspended, and the department was moving to suspend them without pay after consulting with lawyers. Dan?
Janella Hamilton, thanks very much. A disgraced Vancouver police detective spent the day, part of it, apologizing in provincial court before being sentenced for breaching conditions imposed on him as a registered sex offender. More now from Karen Larson.
In 2018, Vancouver Police Detective Jim Fisher pleaded guilty to breach of trust and sexual exploitation. He was sentenced to 20 months in jail. That high-profile case involved victims who were vulnerable teenage girls that Fisher had gained the trust of during an investigation into a notorious sex trafficker. Today's sentencing hearing here in Port Coquitlam was the result of Fisher pleading guilty to a charge of breaching a condition imposed on him as a registered sex offender. It requires Fisher to report to police when he takes on employment or volunteer jobs. But in 2023, when he was recruited by his son to help teach canoeing at the Loon Lake Wilderness Camp in Maple Ridge, he did not report. In his address to the court, Fisher apologized repeatedly. The judge has reserved sentence until after Christmas. Crown is asking for a jail sentence of 60 days. Fisher's defense is asking for a 30-day conditional sentence to be served in the community. Karen Larson, CBC News, Port Coquitlam.
5 youths have now been charged with one count of assault each in the case of an alleged targeted attack on a 13-year-old girl in Kelowna in September. More now from Brady Strachan.
The allegations in this case have shocked many in Kelowna, sparking conversations among parent groups and teens about youth bullying and child safety. Today, a significant development in this case as 5 youth appeared in court with their guardians or parents Before a judge, each of them charged with one count of assault. Now, those charges are connected with an incident in late September when a 13-year-old girl was allegedly lured to a popular lakefront park in Kelowna and there allegedly swarmed and attacked by several youth as many other teens looked on, many of them recording the incident with their cell phones. Some video of what happened in the park was shared online, sparking outrage here and also a police investigation. Also in court today, the father of the alleged victim. He spoke with reporters afterwards and shared about the trauma he says his family has faced since this incident in late September. He says his daughter, his other child and their mother have left the community for fears of their safety. And he says his mental health is also suffering as he tries to process what he saw in the videos that were shared online. Now, the identities of all of the 5 youth who are facing charges are protected by a publication ban, as is the identity of the alleged victim. The court was adjourned today. There's another hearing in mid-January. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
The search continues for a person who went missing after a deadly landslide on Saturday. Crews in Lions Bay are using heavy machinery to get to the site. This marks the second fatal slide in as many months here on the South Coast. As John Hernandez reports, experts warn landslide risks are rising and more needs to be done to prevent them.
An aerial search, the most effective tool for now as crews struggle to access the slide site by ground. Access points are buried.
There's a lot of large logs that need to be moved to safely continue the search.
The debris flow swept down the mountainside on Saturday, tearing a home from its foundation. One person is dead, another missing. Geotechnical crews are assessing the stability of the landscape so they can bring in heavy machinery to clear debris in search of the missing resident.
And the community is close-knit, so when this happened, many in the community are close friends of these residents.
Well, it was very sad. We know the couple, and we're very disappointed and very sad for what occurred.
This marks the second fatal landslide in the region this winter. A woman who lived on Coquitlam's Quarry Road was killed when a debris flow tore through her home in October. Experts warn many of the region's homes are in vulnerable areas.
Steep slopes and the presence of water are the two main ingredients in triggering landslides. We have a tendency to construct our houses in valley bottom areas.
This geotechnical engineer says climate change will likely lead to more natural slides in the future, but that doesn't mean vulnerable communities can't be proactive.
It shouldn't be used as a scapegoat for us not to go and collect this information and find where these high-risk areas are and go in and look at opportunities to mitigate.
Back in Lions Bay, the mayor says he expects this tragedy will lead to further assessments of uphill hazards once the search is over. Landslide risks, residents here have come to accept to live on this scenic coast. John Hernandez, CBC News, Lions Bay.
The family of a BC man with bipolar disorder and chronic back pain is suing now the federal and provincial governments after he allegedly used a day pass from hospital to end his life with medical assistance. As Jason Proctor explains, it is the second time the MAID framework has come under scrutiny in court in recent months.
So this is a story about a lawsuit grounded in a tragic situation. A man with chronic back pain and bipolar disorder who allegedly used a day pass from St. Paul's Hospital to end his life through medical assistance. But there's a much broader question being asked here, which is whether Canada's medical assistance in dying framework, or MAID as it's known, is failing people who suffer both mental and physical illnesses. So here's what happened. According to his family, this 52-year-old man named JMM got approval for MAID, but later changed his mind, deciding he wanted to try to deal with his back pain through other means. Now, his children, former spouse, and father claim he never should have been eligible for MAID in the first place. Regardless, though, they got him committed to St. Paul's psychiatric unit because of his mental issues in late 2022, where they say the doctors actually agreed with them that he wasn't competent to consent to MAID. Somehow, though, they say he got a day pass from St. Paul's, went to a clinic, and ended his life through MAID. Now, The way MAID works is that you cannot qualify on the sole grounds of mental illness. But in cases like JMM's, the family says people with mental and physical illnesses are vulnerable. And this case actually echoes another one that hit the BC courts back in October, asking similar questions. In that situation, a judge stepped in at the very last minute to stop an Alberta woman who came here to end her life through MAID. Her partner said she had bipolar disorder as well as a medical condition. And the judge in that case said there was a serious issue to be tried about greater oversight and whether that was needed in terms of the MAID process. JMM's family want damages for wrongful death and a declaration his rights were breached. None of the allegations in this latest case have been proven in court, and there's been no response to the lawsuit. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Madavi has our look at the weather across the province. That is a busy map. We got a little break today in between. What is that again?
Another system.
There you go.
Another atmospheric river feeding in. This one a little bit weaker than the last one, and also a little bit further north. So the one that we saw yesterday, moderate atmospheric river, pretty typical for this time of year in BC. Keep in mind, we get a few dozen of these a year, so nothing out of the ordinary, but it was a strong storm for sure. Right now, we're seeing a little bit less precipitation across parts of the province, and I do want to highlight, look at this. No warnings right now. Isn't that nice across BC? As we get into tomorrow, it's a possibility in parts of the north, but temperatures are coming up. No more of that really nasty wind chill, and things have really dried out across the south coast as well. If we take a look at our forecast over the next few hours, you can see that next wave of precipitation coming in, so expect that pretty soon. Another wave at times heavy for parts of the island, but only a few showers really making it to Vancouver. And then Friday, early morning, looks pretty nice too, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Bears on the rugged west coast of Vancouver Island are getting a lot smarter and learning some new tricks. Ucluelet and Tofino were trying to figure out just how some of them have outsmarted the regional garbage system. The CBC's Maurice Zeidler has more on some brilliant bears behaving badly.
Hey! At least once a week, Taylor Godolphin has to deal with this.
The bear usually knocks over the garbage first, and if they don't break the clasp, then they try to drag it away.
Godolphin says bears have accessed her waste bins a few times in the past few years. That's when the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District introduced bear-resistant bins secured with a brass carabiner.
Sometimes in the summertime, I've just had my window open, sleeping, and I hear sniffing in my window, and I open the curtains, and there's a bear face-to-face with me.
Bears are a part of life on Vancouver Island's west coast. Like most communities with an active bear population, securing garbage, recycling, and compost is a necessity. But lately, something has changed.
There's an internal spring in the carabiner, and they figured out how to twist them and break that spring.
Hansen says about 12 bears throughout the region have figured out how to tamper with the carabiners, or just break into the bins the old-fashioned way.
We've seen bears that have actually learned how to tear through the lid of the cart.
WildSafe BC recently updated Tofino Council on the issue. Hansen wants residents to replace the brass carabiners with steel, but also he says about 80% of residents aren't properly anchoring their carts.
What happens when they drag them away into a private place where they can really spend time to work on them, is that they learn where the vulnerability is.
Tofino Mayor Dan Law says it's a matter of habituation for residents as much as for the bears.
We have to compensate and get everybody on the same page, anchoring their carts and securing the lids with steel carabiners.
Law says he's hopeful residents will bear in mind the recommendation, or the consequences could be dire.
If the bears continue to be able to access garbage, then it's going to be a significant problem, and next year in the spring we will see bears euthanized.
Marie Seidler, CBC News, Comox.
The Canadian loonie is at its lowest point since the earliest days of the pandemic. After the break, what its slide means for your purchasing power.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
The Canadian dollar has slipped below 70 cents for the first time since the depths of the COVID pandemic in 2020. It can be a painful experience for anyone buying U.S. dollars, among other currencies. Michelle Gassoub has more on the exchange rate roller coaster.
The value of the loonie is low, really low, dipping below 70 cents U.S. for the first time since March 2020. Economists are talking about it, but what does this mean for you? The value of the Canadian dollar is always on an exchange rate roller coaster compared to the US for a lot of different reasons. But when it goes down, your buying power is directly affected, even if you don't cross the border.
The cost of goods that we're importing is going to be worth a lot more. And so your dollar is just not going to go as far. So you will see what looks like higher prices.
So which items in particular could see a spike? Well, there are a lot of them.
Raw materials, groceries. We import quite a bit of groceries from the United States. Agricultural goods, for example. In addition to that, electronics, we're likely going to see a higher cost there as well.
Head south of the border and you'll get a lot less bang for your Canadian buck.
If you're traveling south for the holidays and visiting relatives in the United States, things are all going to get more expensive.
You know, we've got a credit card and you come home and then you're whacked with, you don't really know until you get your bill.
I just bought money from the exchange right here, and I have to say I was a little pinched. I was like, oh my goodness.
If you're feeling pinched and whacked, you're not alone. Let's break down some real life examples. Around a year ago, on December 29th, 2023, the Canadian dollar was sitting around 76 cents US. At that time, a rental car that cost $500 US would be $658 Canadian. Today, that rental car will set you back $725. A hotel bill for $1,400 US dollars that previously would have been $1,842 Canadian will now cost you $2,029. It's not the news Canadians want to hear heading into the holidays. And with tariffs on the horizon, there's more economic uncertainty ahead. The currency roller coaster will keep rolling. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Forensic exams, police reporting, and counseling. These are all new services that will be available in one central hub at the Kamloops Sexual Assault Counseling Center. Their new location in an old renovated heritage house downtown is offering some new programs for survivors, including children.
Sexual assault care looks a little bit different across the province, depending on where you're trying to access. Currently in Kamloops, if you want to access a forensic medical exam, or what some people might know of as a rape kit, you do so at the emergency department at the hospital. If people want to make a police report or explore what those options might be with police, they do so at the detachment.
Kamloops was one of 5 centres across the province that received funding from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. This new location offers clients the chance to receive treatment in a warm, inviting, home-like setting. It's based on a model of wraparound services that include forensic exams, police reporting, and counseling.
This is our therapeutic playroom. Children process trauma differently sometimes than adults.
Alex Dolson says that there is often a wait list for counseling for kids. They see children 3 years of age and older, and about 100 kids per year. This therapeutic playroom for children is meant to give them space and resources to work through their trauma. The services here are not just for women, they're for anyone who's experienced gender-based violence. The hope is that with the success of this program, more centers like this one will continue to pop up across the province.
What we know in the research is that positive social responses after sexual assault have a huge impact in a person's healing trajectory, in the resilience that they experience after. Being able to offer these services in a co-located space, so all in the same space, is going to improve the healing trajectories of survivors in our community.
Shelley Joyce, CBC News, Kamloops.
A look at the day that was in Leavenworth, Washington. Very snowy, lots of fog, a lot of Christmas lights, as you can see. Darius Madavi will have your BC-wide weather forecast coming up. Stick around. Two skiers and a snowboarder were rescued at Sun Peaks Resort near Kamloops last weekend. They were discovered out of bounds but safe thanks to search and rescue and cutting-edge drone technology. Our Shelley Joyce met up with the drone project manager.
Nico Torsha was summoned home as he was just about to call it a night. He and his teammate from Hummingbird Drones packed up their gear, dressed for the mountain temperatures, and headed up to Sun Peaks, where a search was underway for a trio of missing skiers. When it comes to a rescue like this one, a drone is the eye in the sky, offering an overhead perspective of a search area. These searchers used infrared technology to zone in on the body heat given off by the missing skiers. Notice the little white spots on the search screen. That's them. They have located the subjects thanks to their heat signature.
So you can see us sort of searching here. We're switching between different sensors, thermal, and both myself and Noah noticed this flashing light. We said, "What's that?" We turned to it, and sure enough, 3 human bodies on the thermal sensor. Noah and I both kind of looked at ourselves and smiled at each other and kind of gave each other a little shake, like, "We did it, man, we found them." Our drone has a beacon, a large flashing light. They saw that, they sort of signaled to us. We flew over to them. He gives us the thumbs up, and you can tell, I'd imagine these guys are exhausted. You know, we'd been searching for them for 7 hours. They were missing for a little bit longer than that. So you could really see it in their body language. They were relieved to know that we had found them.
The drones and Nova Maps software used by Hummingbird in this case went on to help the rescue team navigate out of this treacherous terrain. This search was both technical and physically grueling, hauling gear and clambering through snow and steep ground. A successful rescue like this one is emotional for the subjects and for the team operating the drones.
Had to stop myself from tearing up a little bit. Obviously, we all have loved ones. We all can sort of put ourselves in that shoes of somebody being missing. And so when you're able to find those people and bring them home, it's a great feeling.
Helping search and rescue is just part of what these drones are used for. They are put to work during wildfire season, on floods and other natural disasters.
Drone technology and its use is still in its infancy, but it's only going to grow.
Shelley Joyce, CBC News, Kamloops.
Donald Trump has called our prime minister a governor repeatedly on social media, and now he's once again suggesting Canada should become a U.S. state. Katie Simpson looks at the latest salvo from the incoming president and his ongoing jabs at this country.
Some of Donald Trump's staunchest allies in Congress laughed off the president-elect's fixation with Canada.
Donald Trump keeps talking on social media about making Canada the 51st state. I'm curious as to anyone has any insight as to why or what you might think of that.
So humor is dead. I think to the second part of the question, I think Donald Trump is being humorous, okay?
This is the latest apparent joke, posted at 3:23 in the morning. Trump mischaracterizes the trade deficit as a subsidy, adding many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it is a great idea. 51st state. All similar to claims Trump's been making for weeks.
We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state.
This is already a difficult moment in Canada-U.S. relations. The Trudeau government is desperate to appease Trump, who is demanding tougher border security, or else Canada and Mexico face 25% tariffs.
There's no daylight in terms of the objectives we share with the incoming administration.
Canada's announcement Tuesday to spend $1.3 billion on border improvements has resonated. Trump's team sending a press release victory lap saying President Trump is securing the border and he hasn't even taken office yet. While his incoming press secretary posted, President-elect Trump has done more to secure our northern border than Joe Biden has in 4 years. Incredible.
And indeed, that's what happens when you have a strong leader come in and lay down markers. And so we're really happy about that.
But even Trump's allies wonder whether he'll be satisfied.
You're asking me to read the mind of President Trump, and I will say that I support him. Will what Canada's doing be enough to prevent tariffs being imposed upon Canada? I don't know. I don't know if you guys have any insight on that, but I simply don't know.
Katie Simpson reporting from Washington. Now, Trump's new message is also getting reaction on this side of the border, as Jamie Strachan shows us. While some are taking with a grain of salt, others are taking the shift in tone more seriously.
I just want to ask you a thought on one thing. You got 1 sec? Okay, all good.
People on Bay Street are busy.
No?
Walking with purpose, no time to talk.
Have you heard about this Trump?
But ask about Donald Trump floating the idea of Canada as the 51st state.
I think it's hilarious. I think it's a joke, and I don't think anybody should be taking this seriously.
Well, disappointed, but it's gotten under the skin of many.
Insulted? Absolutely. You know, we are Canadians first, and that's about it.
Trump has been publicly riffing on this idea for a few weeks. He called Prime Minister Trudeau governor after dinner at his Florida golf club. Initially dismissed as a joke, the line of humor has persisted on social media and in interviews by the president-elect.
Half of it's fake, half of it's real, and you don't know I think you got to see what he does.
Trump said many Canadians share his feelings. An online poll of more than 1,500 Canadians released last week by Leger Marketing suggests that number is 13%, with a 2.5% margin of error.
I think it's a good idea. Everything will be cheaper. You'll have the right to bear arms, which you should have the right to protect yourself. Across the border, no problem.
The idea that we would become, or even contemplate for a second becoming the 51st state is offensive.
Former Quebec Premier and federal cabinet minister Jean Charest calls this all a wake-up call, a chance for Canada to redefine itself in a relationship clearly not as chummy as it once was.
We are a G7 country, we're a G20 country, we're significant, and we can play a much more significant role as opposed to just always responding to the United States.
It was an excellent conversation.
The danger, some experts say, is showing your cards too soon, reacting to a torrent of tweets designed to append and upset.
There may be something lost if you prematurely offer concessions or you decide your strategy before you know how his second administration is going to function.
But it will be different, more contentious. Those cards are already on the table. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Russia says it has made an arrest after one of its top generals was killed in a targeted explosion in Moscow. As Crystal Gabatsing reports, Russian officials say an Uzbek man has now confessed to the attack.
Russian officials are not naming the man, but images of him have been broadcast on Russian state media along with a confession video. CBC does not know when it was recorded or if the man was under duress when giving the statement. The individual appears on camera wearing a black winter coat with his hands cuffed in front of him. Svetlana Pedorenko is the spokesperson for Russia's investigative committee. She says the man was recruited by Ukraine's security service and that he was offered $100,000 US to carry out the deadly attack on Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, and that he was promised residency in a European country. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says the killing of Kirillov shows that, as he put it, the Kyiv regime doesn't shy away from using terrorist methods. Explosives were attached to an electronic scooter and detonated as the Russian lieutenant general and an aide walked out of an apartment building early Tuesday morning. Both were killed. The strike was carried out in a complex with many high-rise buildings located about 7 kilometers away from the Kremlin. The spokesperson for Russia's foreign ministry said during a press briefing today that Russia will not be intimidated and that all will be confronted and the perpetrators will be found and punished wherever they happen to be. Kirillov was the highest-ranking Russian military officer to be assassinated inside Russia by Ukraine. The attack is set to be raised Friday at a UN Security Council meeting. Crystal Gabatsing, CBC News, London.
More than 14 months into a war between Israel and Hamas, there are signs both sides could be close to a deal. The plan, which would be implemented in phases, involves a halt to fighting in Gaza and the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas militants. More now from Briar Stewart.
Another scene of chaos as a crowd swarmed around a dozen aid trucks in the city of Han Yunis. As a videographer working for CBC News captured these images, gunshots rang out in an attempt to keep people from stealing the desperately needed supplies.
over 14 months into this war, people have known extreme deprivation, and they need everything from food and nutrition to shelter.
According to local health officials, more than 45,000 people have been killed in Gaza throughout the war. After months of misery, there are now reports that ceasefire negotiations are gaining momentum. Some Gaza residents spoke out, telling CBC News it's time for Hamas to agree to a deal.
They should give the prisoners which they have for Israel and to be a peaceful one this time.
Hamas should be in the war here and sign this agreement. Because the situation in Gaza is very bad.
There are reports that if there is a deal, it would include the gradual return of hostages in exchange for Palestinians in Israeli jails.
Bring them back, all of them, now.
Families have been making those pleas for more than a year, only to watch as talks break down.
Israel is the one.
This time, though, experts say it might be different.
Hamas now is under significant pressure from regional mediators like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar, far more than it was only a couple of months ago. At the same time, its domestic popularity is waning quite significantly.
Pressure is also mounting from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who warned there would be hell to pay if the hostages aren't released before his inauguration. But even if there is a deal, there's no clarity on just what becomes of Gaza afterwards. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
A CBC News investigation is shedding light on how social media is being used to inflame tensions between Sikhs and Hindus in Canada. As Jonathan Montpetit reports, some members of the Indian diaspora say misinformation is ratcheting up tension in communities.
Balwinder Singh hosts a local radio show from his basement in Brampton, Ontario. His Punjabi-speaking listeners often call in about Indian politics. And he says he's noticed a recent rise in tensions between Hindus and Sikhs.
I feel unsafe, and many people do.
He thinks misinformation on social media is driving it, especially about the Sikh separatist movement and diaspora.
As if these two communities are separate communities, and people who belong to Hindus, for example, that they should feel endangered by the Sikhs and vice versa.
We examined several hundred posts on X made in November by both critics and supporters of the Khalistan separatist movement. We found that both sides make unverified claims, but posts critical of the Khalistan movement were much more frequently amplified by suspected bot accounts. This post falsely claims Sikhs taking part in a religious event were marching around Surrey, saying they own Canada. The post went viral, boosted by retweets from nearly 500 suspected bot accounts. The misinformation then became the topic of several news stories in India.
Tensions continue in Canada after the recent pro-Khalistani mob attack on Hindu devotees.
Khalistani sympathizers Brinsley has termed Canadians invaders and asked them to leave Canada.
Daniel Boardman is a journalist with the right-wing National Telegraph. He authored the viral post.
Do some bots retweet me? Sure. But I don't think bots are that significant in the outreach they have.
But Singh says he's worried misinformation will drive a wedge between two communities that coexist peacefully in Canada.
I think that is something very dangerous because as we always say that Canada has been known for safety, always.
It's not clear from our analysis who is controlling the bots, but Canada's National Security Committee has said it believes the Indian government uses media manipulation as a form of political meddling. Jonathan Montpetit, CBC News, Montreal.
Christmas is often known as a time to spread joy. But one man in Nova Scotia isn't feeling the love. We'll tell you why next. The Christmas season is known, in movies at least, as a time for miracles. And one pseudo-Santa in Nova Scotia is hoping that's true and that his wish comes true. Shayna Luck has his story.
Don Johnson's been making Christmas ornaments. He loves the little wood shop attached to his home, a converted garage beside the Sackville River. But he's worried he might lose it. This fall, he and his landlord learned the conversion never had the proper city permit. He has to move out by April, and everything that makes this a home has to be ripped out.
Devastated, absolutely devastated. In the past year and a half, I've put my heart and soul into this place.
The reason is the river. He's learned the city considers his cottage is in a floodplain. Last year, this little river rose in the devastating July floods. Many homes in the area were affected, including this one. Johnson repaired the damage for his cottage and for his neighbors. He's the caretaker for this whole property. And they love him for it.
Neighbors are constantly bringing over food. I'm helping them with things. It is a fantastic neighborhood, it really is.
His landlord says when she bought the property in 2019, she didn't know the permit was missing, and she's fighting to keep her caretaker tenant.
He's great. He acts like a superintendent.
She's applied for a permit, asked the city how to make it right.
It has been arduous, for sure. But I'm just going to see it through to the end.
The city's issued a notice of compliance. Spokespeople said they can't say more because it's an active file. Given the housing crisis in Halifax, Johnson hopes there's some room for compromise.
If I'm willing to take the risk and the landlord's willing to take the responsibility with the housing situation as it is, why not? Why not let me stay here?
If not, this will be his last Christmas here. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia.
A newspaper that serves an Indigenous territory near the Canada-U.S. border is shutting down after 40 years in print. As Jorge Barrera reports, members of the community say losing the paper means losing an important connection with their past.
Is this it?
Yep, that's
Volume 1, July 1st, 1983.
After over 40 years, Indian Time, the newspaper covering Akwesasne, an Indigenous territory with over 23,000 residents on the Canada-U.S. border, is closing. Final edition, Thursday.
The American Legion honors veterans November 11th, 2024. As I was standing there and it was freezing out and taking photos, I realized that I wouldn't be doing this anymore. Alex Jacob, Daniel Thompson, they both started this paper.
For the first time since the 1960s, no newspaper will record history in the Haudenosaunee community.
This is of 4 brothers, the Phillips brothers, our local heroes, who served in, I think, one in the Navy, one in the Army, one in Korea, one in World War II, and maybe one in Vietnam. It's our history all right here.
Look at the Mohawk Mothers thing.
Stephen Bonspiel's Eastern Door covers the sister Mohawk communities of Ganawagi and Ganesadage. He worries about the news hole in Akwesasne.
Who's going to come forward to replace that? Doesn't look like anybody, because nobody wants to take on print in this day and age. You know, there's so many things against journalists. They're being attacked, they're being targeted, you know, fake news and all this stuff. Here's the app.
Bert Crowfoot turned Windspeaker into a famed national Indigenous paper in 1990 when federal funding cuts ended 9 Indigenous newspapers.
Whenever an Indigenous voice for the community closes its doors, it's a loss.
Look at what's on issue 2 on the cover. PCBs.
Reporter Isaac White has been arrested covering land claims protest, and he exposed election troubles during his time at the paper.
It's a connection to home. I know that my byline will be here forever, so at least, you know, in some small way, I've been a part of this.
But no new editions will continue charting the story of Akwesasne. Jorge Barrera, CBC News, Akwesasne Territory.
Now we go to PEI and the remarkable story of a 27-year-old man sharing his journey to recovery. He lost his leg in a shark attack while snorkeling in Turks and Caicos. As Lisa Shing shows us, the kiteboarder is once again reaching for the sky.
That was ugly. Movement, once effortless, now requires every ounce of strength and concentration.
Doesn't look perfect, but it's come a long way.
Lucas Arsenault, the 27-year-old professional kiteboarder from PEI, traveled the globe, winning competitions until May, when he was attacked by a shark while snorkeling in Turks and Caicos.
And he just latches onto my knee, and I could feel, obviously, it's just ripping skin, and the bite strength is so strong, I could hear bones shatter instantly.
Arsenault got another breath in when it brought him to the surface, and then when it pulled him under for a second time, he saw a chance for survival.
I saw the eyes, and that's what allowed me to get out, because I was able to poke his eyeballs.
His family and friends pulled him back on the boat. His girlfriend tried to stop the bleeding using a makeshift tourniquet.
It's almost like your head's just filled with air, like you don't really know what to do.
I'm wondering, like, how is this going to work? Like, I'm dying. Is it any moment? Do I pass out?
None of that happened. Instead, his right leg was amputated. At the time, Arsenault questioned whether he would ever walk again. But with the support of his friends, family, and kiting community and his medical team, he went from a wheelchair to walking with a prosthetic in 10 weeks. And 3 months later, this.
Just gratitude, just happiness.
Is that a normal rate of improvement?
It's exceptional. It's an exceptional story. And then so to observe it, like, I can't say if it's normal or not normal. No one else is kiting with that level of amputation in PEI, maybe even in Canada.
Got the leg going here.
Since then, he's found a new normal. Ways to stay active, particularly key to his recovery. Gratitude.
Pull-ups are nice, yeah, because I'm a few pounds lighter.
And a positive attitude.
If you're gonna face a 1,000-pound tiger shark and you come out as I came out, like, you're pretty happy in the end.
And recently, a trip back to Turks and Caicos to make peace and new memories. A fresh start with much more to accomplish. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Mont-Carmel, Prince Edward Island.
Darius Manavi is back now with our BC-wide forecast. We are getting a lot of rain, a lot of storms. This is normal, though. It fills up the reservoirs.
Yes.
Still good to be careful, though.
That's a great point. It is good news on that front, for sure. I mean, we see this sort of localized risk of flooding every year. I mean, it's always a little bit concerning when it comes, especially when it's coming to your neck of the woods, but good for the reservoirs. Freezing levels are high now, so we're not building up the snowpack, but reservoirs are still, I'd say, the second best thing we could be filling up right now besides snowpack. Now, we can see that next wave of precipitation coming in as that next system rolls in. Again, high freezing levels mean only the highest peaks are going to be getting that snow as that continues to move in. There you can see some heavier rainfall coming as well. So coming in waves throughout the day tomorrow. Friday is looking a little bit clearer in many places, but then we get another wave of precipitation coming late on Friday. For the most part, this is going to be some showers for many regions, but again, the place where we're going to see that rain impact is much further north than we did this time around. So Vancouver, Victoria getting a bit of a break this time, but as we'll see in a moment, the areas further north on the island getting some pretty heavy precipitation for sure. Also seeing some strong winds in many places, the North Island and the west coast of the island in particular. As we run this through, you can watch those numbers. Gusts up to probably 60, 70 kilometers per hour. And again, this model is probably underselling it a bit, probably add 10 kilometers per hour to a lot of these areas. But beyond that, another wave of wind coming late on Friday as well. So again, just a series of systems rolling in, hitting the coast, and then moving off once again. If we take a look at our precipitation forecast, here we go. You can see that bit of snow on parts of the Rockies, another wave coming in, lots of snow coming up into the central interior. Again, the one place where we're really seeing that overlap in terms of places that got a lot of snow already and getting another dump. Most of the south is only going to see some, I'd say, moderate snowfall coming with this next system rolling in. And then same thing as we get into Friday as well. You can see that next wave of precipitation. The other thing I want to mention, Saturday also looking a little bit more calm. You can see here clearing up across the province. Then Sunday, once we get through this little bit of precipitation, Sunday, a much bigger storm system potentially rolling in. We're a ways out, so that could not pan out as I'm saying it will, but it seems fairly likely that it will. Again, precipitation totals highest going to be on the north part of the island this time. One wave on Thursday and then another one on Friday. And if we zoom in here, you can see very high totals, around 100 millimeters in some of those areas. But Vancouver being spared this time. If we take a look at our snow totals here, we see, again, lots of snowfall in parts of the interior, but the south coast, especially the local mountains, freezing levels high enough, we're not really seeing it there. Temperatures are going to continue coming up in the more northern parts of the province over the next few days. And then some more precipitation coming to places, Dan. And then in terms of 5-day forecast, bit of activity, but overall, again, typical.
No kidding. All right, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Still to come, beachgoers in Rio de Janeiro get a surprise visitor, but how did it end up there? We'll tell you more after this. On the beach in Brazil, that's where at least one sea lion sleeps tonight.
It's not unusual for migrating animals to make rest stops, but a napping sea lion was still an odd sight for some beachgoers in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Part of the sand was cordoned off to leave the visitor in peace.
Good thing. Wildlife experts say the animal appears to be healthy and believe a marine current may have pushed it far from its usual habitat this time of year, closer to the Antarctic, the southern hemisphere, just days away from its official start of summer. And you are hours away from your official start of holidays.
That's right.
That's going to be great. Have a wonderful time.
No, I earlier today said it's a week until Christmas. Then I was like, oh my God, it's a week until Christmas.
I know. But you got the hat.
I got the hat.
The gifts.
I'm almost ready.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, it should be good. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem and on YouTube.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. Good night.
See you in 2025.